I'm sorry. Okay? I'm sorry. 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 I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, okay?
Hey everybody, this is I'm Sorry, Okay? A podcast where we are watching so much Degrassi. I'm Mary here with Paul and LD. This week we watched Season 1, Episode 3 of Degrassi Junior High, The Experiment. This episode is written by Avram Jacobson and directed by Clark Mackey and originally aired on February 1st, 1987. In this episode, Yick copies one of Stephanie's old papers to prove that Mr. Raditch will automatically give him a bad grade. Melanie and Kathleen buy, quote-unquote, drugs from Joey. And so I think this is, Clark Mackey is a new director for us, by the way.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Thrilling.
I don't know if we could tell from the episode itself, but...
I don't think so.
Well, we'll see if we start to notice his personal style.
Yeah, I think we're gonna really have to let it play out.
Yeah. Let the episode unfold, much like a flower.
Oh,
as Boula's dad would say. So, scene 1, we are in Raditch's class. Yick has a sports bag with a basketball and like a ton of papers on his desk. So this was kind of interesting because he's only in this room for at least one period, but he had like an entire collection of papers.
It's like a year's worth of like paper.
He is stressing me out so much with his
maybe,
desk and locker organization.
Yeah, and I felt like maybe this dude just needs a binder or something.
A trapper keeper?
Yeah, right? Like, that seems like it could be an easy solution, but...
It felt like a pretty heavy dramatization of what I was like in school, where I had no real organization, and I really was, like, my papers were everywhere, and I was reading comics instead of, like, bothering to listen to the teacher. But, yeah, it was sort of like, it looked like he had been sitting there for, like, 6 months collecting paper.
Yeah. But school just started, like, a week or two ago.
Yeah.
I had a binder for every class.
Oh, yes?
Labeled? Yeah.
Oh,
Obviously.
a labeled binder for every class.
I mean, let me be clear. It was purely self-preservation. I couldn't get my... the lock on my locker open, so I carried everything with me all day.
So instead of resolving that issue,
I couldn't.
You came up with a workaround.
It was confusing. I couldn't handle it.
Is it the double turn to the left?
Who knows?
You know, you got to go once to the right, and then you got to pass the number on the left, I think, and then stop there, and then back to the right.
Honestly, who's to say what it was that was holding me back there?
I would have loved to assist you with your locker.
No, I just had two
troubles.
like blonde girls who just like were across the hall at their own lockers, just laughing at me because I couldn't get my locker open. Yeah, they were my Joey Jeremiah, I guess. I was their Arthur. They were just really mean. Yeah.
So I did want to note, we have like a kind of running kind of joke here where every time Raditch starts a class, two kids immediately just start having a side conversation.
Oh,
I think it happens in like every Raditch scene. And also, I wanted to note that he starts his class by saying, "Good morning, scholars," and the kids all reply in unison, "Good morning, Mr. Raditch."
I want to know how he initiated that, because 7th graders who have never met Mr. Raditch before surely had to be told what the proper response was.
Yeah, like they were practicing a call and response to just get the class going.
Yeah, can I also just say that every time someone is talking in his class, he only calls out one of them? He never
That's true.
He never has a problem with both people.
Well, do you think that he stereotypes and that he's only calling out the students that he perceives to be troublemakers?
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know.
So as the students are ignoring Raditch and having their side convo, Yick and Arthur are talking about how they're going to be trying out for basketball later, so that's probably why Yick brought his own basketball today in one of those big sports bags, which I definitely had for soccer, but I never brought it to school, I don't think. I felt like Yick was showing off a little bit here.
I didn't know you had to bring your own basketball.
Right, I don't think you would have to bring your own basketball, so that's why I feel like he's doing it just to...
He's like, just so you guys know, I've got my own ball.
Yeah.
He is not someone I would have pegged as an athlete.
No, he kind of, throughout the episode, he sort of describes himself as a jock, which I wouldn't necessarily guess from looking at him either. But when they get to the basketball tryouts, it seems like the other kids kind of know that about him too. So maybe he was like in the previous year or something, maybe he was on the basketball team.
He seems like a shooter.
He's a 7th grader, so they wouldn't know. I've got notes about this when we get to the tryouts.
Okay. All right. So yes, as they're talking, as LD pointed out, Raditch only calls out Yick, and this is where he first refers to him as Mr. You the Disorganized.
So rude.
Super rude, and Yick kind of says to Arthur, like, you know, he always picks on me. So we already are getting this, like, dynamic between the two of them. So now we're in the hallway, and Arthur stops by Steph's locker because he asked her to bring some shoes that he needed to try out for basketball. And so they're sort of having this conversation about the shoes, and Stephanie's sort of like, why are you bothering to like try out for basketball? And Arthur says that their dad used to play, so it's in his blood. And he's pretty, I don't know that Arthur has ever actually played basketball before, but he's feeling pretty confident at this point.
Extremely optimistic here.
Yeah. First of all, I love his high tops. That he gets Stephanie to bring him for tryouts. But also, yeah, I love his confidence. He's just kind of like assuming he is going to be good at basketball. I did not try out for a single thing because the idea of not being good at something in front of other people paralyzed me with anxiety. So good for Arthur.
Yeah, I did like one season of basketball, I think maybe in like 6th grade or something, but I hated basketball. I would never shoot. Even if I had a perfect opportunity, I would always pass it. Shooting in basketball felt like way too much pressure.
I was comfortable with none of it. Yeah.
So as we're in the hallway and Steph and Arthur are talking, we also find out that Steph still wants to keep it a secret that they're siblings. It's a very weird ongoing thing with Steph that definitely makes her seem like a bad person.
Yeah, he helped her with her speech. You would have thought that that would be their turning point.
Yeah.
Right, but nothing has really like changed so far for them. And so after Steph kind of walks away, Joey stops by to get in his daily bullying of Arthur. He says to him, "Hey, Artie Smarty, I hear your mother recalling you." Is this an abortion joke?
Oh.
Yeah, I was also wondering what that, like, recalling. Why did he say recalling?
I thought because when a product is recalled, it's defective. So I thought he was saying, like, I don't know, you have to go back to the factory? Back to the Cabbage Patch for you, Arthur. I don't know.
We'll never know.
That sounds right. So then we move on to Melanie and Kathleen, who are also talking in the hallway, and they're complaining about the lack of parties in junior high. Melanie says her mom warned her all summer that junior high is full of drugs, but she hasn't seen any, which is disappointing to her.
First of all, what is Melanie's mom doing? What is she so worried about? What does she think is going to happen in 7th grade? But also, my favorite part is that she's like, I thought there'd be more parties, and then she says,
not political parties, but real parties with music and boys and potato chips.
Potato chips!
Which is like, yes, that's what makes a good party.
Yeah.
The
If
chicks.
there's no snacks, like that's when you know it's just time to go.
Yeah.
If there's drugs at a party, cool, great. But if there's no potato chips, I don't know.
No, that's not going to be a well-planned party.
I'm sorry, but what am
Also-
I supposed to do with these drugs if there are no potato chips?
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. If there's like weed, but there's nothing to eat, you have
Yeah.
not done a good job planning this party.
No.
You have failed.
Exactly. Well, and so far there's really 0 parties being planned, so it's a failure on a whole other level.
Again, though, aren't we in like the 3rd week of school or something? How many parties did she think there was going to be?
Well, her mom was really hyping it up, and it sort of feels like in the way that that Dare had the opposite effect of like instead of scaring kids away from drugs, it sort of encouraged them to try drugs. Melody's mom's tactic of like excessively warning her about drugs and parties has made her now want to do drugs and go to parties.
I actually have in my notes a whole bunch of stuff about Dare. Because when they start talking later about getting addicted to drugs, I had to look up, when did Dare come out? Did they have Dare in Canada? Do they still have Dare anywhere? So the answers to those questions are Dare came out in 1992, so Dare had not come out yet. They did have Dare in Canada.
Okay.
Who knew? And they still do. They still have Dare.
Yeah, Dare is still a thing.
Oof.
Yeah.
I could not, because I thought that it was one of those things where like Dare was proven to be just completely ineffectual, so maybe we
Right.
stopped giving them money.
Right.
No.
But
No.
apparently,
I mean, I don't
much
know.
like everything else in America, if it is broke, just keep funneling money at
just keep
it.
doing it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do it forever.
I mean, you've got the system in place, so just keep it going.
It's possible the program is different somehow, but I don't know.
And well, so I guess we should say for people who didn't, we all went through the DARE program at our various schools. For people who didn't, so it's drug abuse resistance education, and it's like a cop would come into your class and just kind of like warn you about the dangers of drugs and how your life would spiral out of control if you happen to take drugs.
And also, loads of strategies for saying no when you are offered drugs.
Like role-playing strategies. So definitely like whatever it was in response to, I think we also know now that the whole war on drugs was definitely racism and like racist like based. And like you said, yeah, getting cops into schools and stuff. So it had all these really negative consequences. But the t-shirts were pretty
dope.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were great. I would actually love to have a DARE muscle tee.
Melanie's mom was probably a cop.
Oh, I bet Melanie's mom's
Yeah,
a cop.
maybe her mom's a cop.
That's probably it.
Yeah. Well, Melanie is now on the hunt for drugs. Not a specific drug, by the way, just general drugs.
I
I
just want
mean-
drugs.
Good for Melanie, though. She's open-minded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not gonna
Open-
pigeonhole herself with fucking pot. She'll take anything.
She's open-minded and she's wanting to open her mind even more
Good for her.
with said drugs.
And Kathleen is very, I think Kathleen is kind of an amateur cop. As we'll find out as we go through the series, or at least junior high. Kathleen's kind of a little baby cop.
We'll get there, but Kathleen did do the drugs.
She does
I
do
will
the
say
drugs.
Well, maybe this experience changes Kathleen.
Let's see.
Let's see. All right, so next we're at the basketball tryouts. It's all boys trying out for the team, and so they're kind of taking turns shooting baskets. Arthur misses his shot, but then some kid kind of makes fun of him. I don't even remember what he says, but they're kind of like bullying him. Also
You'll
at
be
basketball
you'll
tryouts.
be our secret weapon. We'll put you on the other team.
There it is. So then this is where Yick gets up to shoot and everyone starts cheering for him. So they must know that he's like decent at basketball. And he makes his shot.
I have in my notes, Snake is basically eye level with the basketball hoop, so he's doing just fine.
He could easily like fail at the tryout and they'd still be like, tall guy, you're in.
And then I also wrote, love that the basketball coach is a woman with a bisexual bob and yellow sweatpants. A look. And those are my notes from this scene. But
yeah, that's about all that happens.
Yeah, I think it's weird though that when Arthur goes up to take his shot, no one's cheering for him. They just all assume he sucks. Like they don't know. Until he takes that shot, they don't know that he's bad. I
probably would have also assumed that he sucked. No offense to Arthur. It just seems like his strength is school.
Maybe he's a Renaissance man.
He said it's in his blood, so.
Yeah, man, he just needs a little bit of coaching.
He needs coaching, and as we see later on, he just kind of has this attitude of like, I mean, you never know until you try, and so if I just try at it, I'll get better, which is true. If you just practice, it doesn't seem like he's been practicing up until this point. Once he starts practicing, he gets better. So it's kind of like, of course, anything that you practice at, you can get better at.
He also at no point refers to himself as being bad at basketball. He only refers to himself as just learning, which I really loved.
Yeah.
And I think that was very
has a great
intentional.
Attitude.
Yeah, I think that was very intentional by the writers to show that, you know, you should still try things and you should practice and get better at them.
Yes. Yeah. He's got a can-do attitude. So next we're outside of the school on the front steps, and Arthur says to Yick, seeing as you're good at basketball and I'm just fine, maybe Yick could help him out. Is he fine though? As we just discussed, not yet, but he sees that his friend is good at basketball and he's just like, oh, okay, so I just need to like talk to this person.
So I'm going to average white male you here and say that, well, actually, he says, seeing as you're good at basketball and I'm just learning, I was wondering if you could show me some stuff, which I wrote down because I took note of the fact that he referred to himself as just learning. Just learning. But what a fine attitude. And so yeah, Yick agrees to help him, and I think that's a very nice thing, because I thought that where this plot might go was that this might be something where Yick gets really popular because he makes the team and then he leaves Arthur behind.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not where it goes.
No, Yick is like, yeah, of course, we're friends.
What an angel.
Yeah.
So next we're at the basketball court, and this is maybe why Yick brought his basketball to school. I don't know if he was planning to play after school, but we get a little b-ball training montage and feeling sharing sesh. So the boys are kind of talking about just like basketball in general, and I think they're also talking about Raditch a little bit here.
I think this is where, Yick starts to he's like suspicious of Raditch's like teaching style, I guess you could say, which I think is very fair. Raditch seems like kind of an asshole.
Yes.
Raditch shares a lot of information publicly with the class. He like reads people's grades out loud and tells people how they did on assignments in front of the entire class.
Yeah. And I don't know, part of what I saw in this scene is like, I think, Degrassi seems like relatively diverse, but part of what I'm reading here is like Yick is like starting to just not be sure if Raditch sees him differently because of the ethnic differences between the two of them. I saw that as it could have been a thing that like when you're younger and you're like in a schooling environment that's majority white, like you can kind of like start to become suspicious of the institutions. And I like that, like, it's never specifically put that way, but he keeps saying like he's stereotyping me, and they let you think that it's because he's messy, but I just feel like there's like light elements there of other things at play, and Yick's trying to figure it out just like everyone else. He's on his own little journey, and I think throughout the episode we'll see where that goes.
I do think, though, that Yick is extremely, like, stressfully disorganized. He doesn't appear to actually put any effort into school, but he kind of wants to blame his underachieving nature on Mr. Raditch. And so you've kind of got both things at play. Like Mr. Raditch is absolutely inappropriately zeroing in on him. And then Yick is also just not good at school. And so you put those two together and it's just not a good combination.
He's totally leaving himself open for it. Yeah.
And I think when you feel like you're not good at school, it's easy to just be like, so I'm just not gonna try. And especially if you have another activity like basketball that you are good at, it sort of makes sense that that's where your focus would be, because that's the thing that you're good at. That's the thing that makes you feel good about yourself. If school makes you feel bad about yourself, I can see why he would just kind of stop trying there.
Yeah, definitely.
So after we leave the basketball court, the boys head to a diner and order 2 chocolate shakes. Also at the diner are Joey and some of his friends and Melanie and Kathleen. Everyone's sort of continuing their earlier conversations. So Yick is complaining about Raditch, saying he stereotypes him and probably doesn't even read his papers. He just assumes that he's stupid. And this is where Arthur first brings up the idea of doing an experiment where they turn in someone else's paper and say that it's Yick's to see what kind of grade he gets.
Love it.
I like that Arthur's being proactive here. It's kind of like a Nordy plan, but it's like also just like a one-off kind of, you know, Arthur is like, he's not going to notice one paper out of all the papers that he grades. He's definitely not going to notice if just like, you know, he's not going to remember one paper from like a previous class or a previous year.
Well, he calculates how many papers
Yes,
Raditch
doesn't he have
reads
a calculator watch?
on his CalcuWatch,
CalcuWatch.
which is perfect, and I love that for him. And I love that he's showing it to Raditch in the beginning of the episode. It's just perfect.
I missed
Yeah,
that.
he does briefly.
Just 2 nerds broing down about a CalcuWatch. I love it so much.
I would like
like-
to brag about the fact that I had a CalcuWatch as a student.
I
You
always wanted
sure
one.
did.
Yes.
It was large.
Got to do some big calculations on there.
Yeah, man.
This is also, I think, this is the second scheme that we've seen from Arthur, because the boys in a previous episode, they had that B plot where they were trying to avoid Joey,
Yes.
like strategically avoid him. So Arthur kind of, I feel like Arthur would really love like Dungeons and Dragons or something. Like he would definitely be the dungeon master. He loves like putting together a plan
Yes.
of action.
Yeah, he's proactive, and I really respect that.
So as part of his plan, Arthur tells Yick that he could get one of Stephanie K's old papers, which I had the thought, does she even know how to write papers, since it seems a little bit harder than writing speeches or making posters, which she had absolutely no idea how to do.
My thought was that maybe what her worry was looking stupid in front of other people. And so making speeches, lots of people are going to see it, but when you write a paper, only your teacher's going to see it. So my thought was that maybe she's actually kind of a secretly good student who sort of pretends to be, you know, not that smart.
We have no reason to believe she's not a good student.
Yeah.
So she's protecting her image in terms of doing things publicly, but just something that she's handing in privately, she's like kind of less concerned about.
That's my hypothesis. I think it's really interesting in this conversation, by the way, that Yick doesn't know that Steph is Arthur's sister.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Arthur has gone so far in keeping this secret for Stephanie and respecting her wishes that even his kind of best friend so far doesn't know that he has a sister and that his sister is Stephanie K.
Right, and who would Yick tell anyway? So this is like kind of an extreme length that Arthur is going to for Steph.
It's such an unreasonable ask.
Yeah, but Arthur's he's doing the damn thing. He's keeping that secret. So Melanie and Kathleen continue their earlier conversation about drugs, and Joey overhears them and, sensing an opportunity, interrupts their conversation. And if we can just pause for a moment to describe his outfit here. He's wearing a denim jacket and a beret, Which, do you think he knows Beret Girl from the previous episode?
Maybe they go beret shopping.
Ooh.
Together?
Yeah. Who's to say? I really love this look. I think it is such a strong look from Joey.
Yes.
As are,
Yes.
quite frankly, all of Joey's looks.
Yeah.
Agreed.
But I love, I mean, this conversation between Melanie and Kathleen opens up with, out of absolutely nowhere, Kathleen just goes, I don't know about drugs. And then, like, Kathleen is your Republican aunt. Like, when she grows up, she will be Angela from The Office.
Hey, now, when I was in 7th and 8th grade, I absolutely would have said something like that. So,
Okay, I'm sorry. My hatred of Kathleen knows no bounds. But she just, I don't know. I understand her trepidation here. I just am kind of like, come on, Kathleen, just be cool for 1 second. And you know, then Melanie's just kind of like, I only want to try drugs once. I don't want to be an addict.
I don't want to get addicted.
Well, she says she doesn't want to be an addict, live in horrible poverty with rats and lice and everything.
Obviously, what her mom
There's a lot
told her.
to unpack here. Her mom
Obviously, this is, yeah.
definitely a cop.
If not a cop, at least a Blue Lives Matter type of mom.
Oh, definitely. She's an all lives matter mom.
So Joey introduces himself as Joey F. Jeremiah, at your service. The F stands for pharmacy.
More like the F stands for fuck boy, am I right?
Oh.
Oh!
And then he starts he goes over a list of just like hilarious names for drugs.
So, what do you want? Smoke? Drop? Pop? What's your style? Lebanese light? Bolivian blue? Degrassi grass? Or the top of my line? New Zealand zappers. Highly recommended.
I gotta try Degrassi Grass. Like,
Yeah.
that's all I know.
Oh yeah, Degrassi Grass. That was the one that piqued my interest as well.
Same.
I
There
He
was
really he really just rattles them off too. Like he is ready for this moment.
He is an alliteration king. Lebanese light, Bolivian blue, New Zealand zappers. He had that ready to go.
How?
I don't know. I don't know.
Incredible.
Do you remember when he tells Stephanie that he can help her with her speech because he knows a lot about talking?
Yes.
I think
He-
we're
How-
seeing
how
that in
could we
action.
forget?
Yeah. He was not lying.
I'd be interested to see what Raditch has to say when he hands back one of Joey's papers, but I don't think we've heard. I'm like, how's Joey doing? He seems like if he's gifted in speaking.
I believe if he thinks the F stands for pharmacy, I would hypothesize he's not doing great.
That's a good point. Maybe he's got a good opening line and closing line, and what he says in the middle doesn't matter.
But I love that Melanie is just like, he rattles all those names off, and then she's just like, yeah, sure, we'll take it.
All of it.
Apparently all of it?
She's ready.
all
She's
of the
ready.
above. So they're gonna meet up a little later for this drug drop. But first, we see Arthur dropping off a B+ paper of Stephanie K's at Yick's house under cover of darkness.
I also kind of like the dichotomy of these scenes where we're kind of witnessing like an arrangement for a drug deal at the diner, and it's kind of lighthearted and whatever, even though it should be like, oh, drugs. But then we transition to, yes, as you said, in darkness, we're witnessing like cheating occurring, which is actually the repercussions play out to be so much worse.
I think this is another episode where lying is kind of okay. You know what I mean? Like Vula lying to her dad, but like no one really got hurt.
Right.
Arthur proposing this experiment, which is technically cheating, but it's okay.
Yeah.
You can see the kid logic behind it. It's not exactly plagiarism like we might see from someone in like high school or college. It's a little bit like naive and innocent.
Yeah,
it's not
definitely.
just for a better grade that he wouldn't otherwise achieve. It's in order to kind of prove he's trying to help his friend like out of a situation where he's not sure if he's being stereotyped or discriminated against in some way. So it has like a purpose.
Yeah, definitely.
At least that's how it starts.
Yeah, that's how it always starts. So back at school the next day, Melanie and Kathleen meet up with Wheels and Joey at the bottom of a dark stairwell for the drugs.
Joey is wearing sunglasses inside.
Yes. His white shades and a fedora.
I love his drug pusher persona.
It's very convincing.
I love it.
And Wheels doesn't know what's going on. Like, Joey did not tell him beforehand. They were just kind of hanging out in this stairwell. So Wheels is just kind of like witnessing like what's happening. But it's interesting, he doesn't really say much until after the exchange. So Joey offers them New Zealand zappers for $5. The girls are kind of considering it, and Joey says, "No pay, no playin', no tip, no trip, no pills, no thrills." This is just one of many amazing things that Joey says in this scene. He also threatens them that if they tell anyone where they got the zappers, they'll be pushing up dandelions.
Honestly, such a moment.
So he gives them the drugs, which are I think they're just like these bright red kind of pills. And he kind of like, does he demo taking one or he just like acts it out?
Yes.
Yeah,
No,
he demos taking one.
He also kind of shows them, so he takes it and then just immediately is like, whoa, weird. Like he's kind of showing them like what to do. Because they're clearly like totally naive and like have no idea what they're doing. So he just sort of like acts out like basically like what they can do once they get these drugs, because they're just kind of like, what happens next?
I feel like it's such a common teen trope on television that someone either pretends to be drunk, pretends to be on drugs, gets sold something that isn't actually drugs. But I don't think I've ever seen that happen.
No, I don't think I've ever seen someone like pretend to be affected by drugs or drinking before either.
No, but it's always on TV.
I didn't even try and pretend. Like, I didn't think about it. Like, I was just like, I don't know.
No one would have offered me drugs.
No.
So I just like I wouldn't have had to worry about that. But I remember the first time I smoked weed, I actually didn't really feel anything. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think if anything, I would have tried to act cool about it. I wouldn't try to act like I was messed up on something.
It feels like a rookie mistake.
Yes.
But I also like that Melanie and what's her friend's name again?
Kathleen.
Thank you. I thought it was fun the way that Melanie and Kathleen were acting once they like took them, and they're just kind of giggling. The marching band walks by with their tubas. Tubas are funny. I mean, you're already gonna laugh, and they seem high on life to me. I felt like this. I felt like after they took the drugs, or after they took the vitamins, it felt very innocent. I thought it felt like they were just having fun with it, and maybe they even kind of knew that nothing was going on, but they were going through something together.
They did get a case of the giggles.
Yeah. And, when you're that young, anything can set you off, and then you're just, like, laughing at everything, and...
Absolutely.
Yeah. So to a degree, I appreciated it.
Can we also talk about two things? One, they dry swallowed those giant vitamins. That can't have been easy. And number two, Joey was selling these pills from a case that he had attached to the under part of his skateboard, which I think is just, I admire his entrepreneurial spirit. Like, I was talking about this yesterday, and Sam, my partner, told me that he knew somebody in high school who stole the headphones that came with, I don't know, like all the computers or whatever at school. And he figured out that you could hollow them out and you could keep your weed stash in them. So he would walk around with these giant headphones, but they were actually just stuffed with bags of weed.
Oh my God.
And I was just trying to think, like, did I ever store any drugs in any kind of weird place, or did you? Like, I had a friend who bought a fake can of Dr. Pepper, but like it was actually a screw top lid, and he kept weed in it so he could like drive with weed.
I never had my own drugs to store anywhere, so no. I had like little spots in my room where I would hide other weird like stuff, but nothing like that. I wonder if those are the kinds of kids that when they started smoking weed would like be like, I turned an apple into a bong, or like I turned this lamp into a bong, or whatever. I wonder if it's that kind of kid who like could have channeled those skills into some kind of like shop class or something, but instead it's just an extracurricular using those ideas for weed purposes only. So as we mentioned, after Joey and Wheels walk away, Wheels is sort of like, bro, what are you doing? And Joey, this is when Joey reveals that he gave them vitamins.
The big reveal.
The big reveal. So, which was also funny. The girls never even asked, like, what is this drug? What is it supposed to do?
Yeah, they're not asking questions. Plus, he already told them. They're New Zealand zappers. What, you're not cool? You don't know what that means? Just take it.
So, back in Raditch's class, Kathleen and Melanie are acting bonkers because they are high on these vitamin New Zealand zappers, and Yick turns in the plagiarized paper.
Raditch hands Melanie's paper back to her, and I don't remember what Raditch said, but
he says, very imaginative. Where do you get your ideas?
Yeah.
From drugs.
From New Zealand zappers, baby.
Woo! And as he's handing back the papers, he hands Yick's paper back last. And every time he says his name, instead of saying Yick, he always says, Mr. You the Disorganized. So he hands the paper back, and Yick got an A-. And as you will recall, Stephanie originally got a B+ on this paper.
Which I think is actually like a pretty standard margin of error, but Yick thinks that it proves that Raditch is an unfair grader. And I'm just thinking like, well, maybe he went easier on you because his standards were lower. Take the A-.
Right, Yick is just kind of, it's funny because, you know, Yick keeps saying that Raditch has already decided how he feels about Yick and that he thinks he's stupid, but Yick has already decided how Raditch feels about him. So even when he gets a good grade, he takes offense at the good grade that he gets. So they're both sort of like locked into their impressions of each other, and they're not really talking it out. And probably because, you know, Raditch is the adult, he should be taking more initiative here. Like if there is a problem, to be like, you know, speaking privately with Yick, maybe not in front of the class. But I think
is still singling out Yick's last name for like being a little different and like making a play on it. I still think that Yick is like, he's on a little like journey to figure out like, is this dude being a piece of shit?
I think does Mr. Raditch call other people by their last names?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
And he definitely doesn't have...
He says Mr. Jeremiah.
Yeah.
I think he has a nickname like that for all of the kind of troublemakers, or the kids that he deems as troublemakers.
Right. And all the little bootlickers are on a first name basis.
Yeah. And Raditch also says next week they're writing letters to world leaders. So I just thought that was interesting. That's a type of writing assignments that they're doing. The writing assignments actually seemed pretty realistic towards like grade 7.
Yeah, there's an episode, I don't remember when he's talking about, I think, T.S. Eliot, and I'm just like, we did not talk about that in middle school. I think they're getting a pretty good education over there in Toronto.
Yes. Maybe with an excessive amount of shaming, but otherwise a good education.
Oh yeah, there is the public shaming aspect.
But hey, that might just be those 80s vibes. People didn't know that children don't really thrive when you're shaming them. All right, so back on the basketball court, Yick and Arthur are talking, and Yick is salty about his A-, saying, the grade should have been the same. He thinks that Raditch thinks he's so dumb that he was just so impressed he could do anything. And as we said, grading papers especially seems like pretty subjective, but I guess that a kid might not have that impression.
Yeah.
But it's not like grading a test,
I mean, it's not math class though. Like, this is the thing, it was an English assignment.
Yeah, Raditch, and he breaks it down later when they finally have a confrontation, and he says literature is fluid. And I think that's fair. It's a fair defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I buy it. So Yick says that now he has to keep turning in Stephanie's papers, which I don't totally understand this logic, but I think he's probably like, it was much easier to copy Stephanie's paper than to try to write my own. So Arthur responds to him, saying, once is an experiment to prove a point, but twice is cheating. And after he says that, Arthur makes a basket, and Yick uses that to pressure him into cheating. He's like, hey, look how much I'm helping you with basketball. You're clearly already improving, so now you have to keep helping me. But Arthur, Yick is helping Arthur to become better at basketball on his own. But he's asking Arthur to help him get better grades purely through cheating.
Very classic, teaching to fish versus giving a fish.
Yes.
Arthur's being given the tools to do this himself. Yick just wants to be given a paper so he can hand it in.
Right. And Arthur is sort of like, as he mentioned earlier, one paper he's not going to notice. The more you do this, the more likely you are to get caught, which is absolutely correct, as we'll see later. So next we are in the library, and Wheels and Joey are in the library, and Melanie and Kathleen and a small, diverse crew of friends approach them. Wheels and Joey think that they're going to be mad about the vitamins, that they realize that it was fake drugs, but they actually are there because they all want more drugs.
Okay.
Joey says, okay, tomorrow, same time, same place, you bring the money and I'll make you funny.
Classic.
So this business is really taking off for Joey. The girls are kind of networking for him and bringing him new clients.
A very strong business model from Joey F. Jeremiah.
Yes.
Which is do nothing and people will continue to give you money.
Eavesdrop on conversations and insert yourself. And then people will give you the money.
I'm sorry, did you say market research?
So back in the dark stairwell, Joey sells more vitamin drugs to the whole crew now. And LD, I think you maybe pointed this out at some point. One of the students, I don't know if we've met her, if we know her name yet, but we do not know her name yet. She is in a wheelchair, and it's not entirely clear how she made it to the bottom of the stairwell.
Yeah.
It seems like there's only one way up.
This character is in a lot of scenes in the background. So far, I haven't seen her really talk to anyone. She doesn't have a name. and she's often being seen in the background kind of coming out of a stairwell or going into a stairwell. I do not see any elevators. I do not see any ramps. I'm so concerned about the access of Degrassi Junior High and how its disabled students were getting around.
She's doing it though. She's making it happen. She is at the bottom of the staircase she has brought the money and is ready to be made funny.
It's true.
It's very true. There's also no ramp in the front of the school.
Exactly.
So,
I'm just saying, man.
The kids all head back to Raditch's class, which for the whole schedule that they have, they only ever seem to be in Raditch's class, and there's another female teacher. Those are the only two classes we really see them in.
Miss Avery and Mr. Raditch appear to be the only two teachers in the school.
For grade 7 and grade 8. They got a busy schedule. And so the kids have all taken the drugs before coming to class, and so also the girl that we mentioned, she's got a couple kind of wheelchair comedy moments here. So she kind of runs herself into the doorway coming in.
I love it.
She seems real cute. I hope we'll get to know her as an actual character.
She is also having fun. These kids are ready to have a good time. None of them are even actually stoned, and they are all loopy. They are going for it.
Their good time is super wholesome. It's just
great.
Giggling. That's it.
Yeah.
It's just
in
giggling.
class.
Yeah.
Which whomst amongst us wasn't in class, and the giggling itself is like a drug. One of your friends does something funny, and the stifling of laughter becomes its own, you can't even overcome it.
It's contagious.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And as per usual, as Mr. Raditch starts talking, no one is listening. Melanie does a hilarious impression of him talking to Kathleen that I honestly laughed out loud at. Just your classic, I can't do, you won't be able to hear me, but just sort of mocking his face as he talks. Pure comedy. So Raditch once again calls out Yick in front of everybody. And he basically says in front of the class, oh yeah, this was a great paper. I remember reading it last year when Stephanie turned it in.
Busted.
He's totally busted. Raditch asks how he got it. And Arthur immediately jumps in and admits that he's the one that gave it to Yick.
Yeah, way to go, Arthur, by the way. Just immediately taking responsibility, totally accepting his consequences.
He went along with Yick's plan. He could have said no. He could have told the kid to step off.
He literally felt peer pressured by his only friend, though.
Yeah. And then Yick absolutely drags Raditch.
Heated exchange.
He he tells him that he's unfair, he stereotypes people, and the entire time, all of this is punctuated by these fake stoner girls laughing at every single thing that Yick says, just super, super loudly.
I'm not gonna lie, the first time watching this, it was a little confusing to me. I didn't get why they were laughing. I was like, he's not really being funny. What's the comedy? And then the second time around, I realized, oh, they're all on drugs.
They're on vitamins.
Yes.
They're high
drugs.
on vitamins, but they've all got the giggles.
They're on New Zealand Zappers, y'all.
The laughing is funny because I remember when kids would kind of talk back to teachers in school, and I don't think you would normally laugh. I feel like you were usually kind of there for the drop. Exactly. That was more the vibe than laughing necessarily. But they're really escalating the situation because, Raditch is kind of losing all control of the classroom at this point.
I was always kind of poking my head out over my trapper keeper. Just oh no.
I think all of us could never imagine talking back to a teacher. So anytime it happened, it felt pretty shocking.
When I got to high school, my sass level really went through the roof. I got a lot of detentions for refusing to ask for the bathroom pass. I was just like, I gotta pee. I'm gonna go.
Yeah, the way that they police your ability to go to the bathroom does seem pretty unfair.
I mean, in a previous episode, Lucy was referring to adults as fascists. I'm still Team
Whoops.
Lucy.
She's not wrong.
Yeah.
So Arthur and Yick have to write a paper on why what they did was wrong in detention. And as Raditch says this, Yick is just like glaring right into his soul. He is now furious. So LD, you just said you got detentions. Paul, did you ever get detentions?
Oh,
in school?
I didn't go to detention. I'd like to be clear. I was given the
You were
slip.
assigned detention.
I don't think I ever went. I went to one detention in middle school, and it wasn't even for anything bad. I had a history teacher who gave out detention slips if you didn't cover your books, like if you didn't put like book covers on your textbooks.
Okay.
Oh.
So I went to one, and that was it.
Fascism.
Yeah.
I had this science class that was like, it was right after lunch, and it was kind of on the other side of the school. So I was like always late getting there, and so my teacher would always give me a detention, but then I could like bring a friend with me. So I had at least one detention where my friend Emily just like came with me and hung out.
That's such a dope friend.
Yeah, she was cool. Yeah, she was just like, I can kill like, half an hour after school or whatever. And I never had to write a paper or anything, but I was kind of just like, I mean, this class just feels like it's too far from the cafeteria. I'm not trying to hustle to get over here.
I got detentions in 6th grade because I had a 6th grade teacher that would, if you turned in homework late, you'd get a detention.
Whoa, 6th grade.
Yeah, I got a lot of detentions in 6th grade.
Wow. Cracking the whip
'Cause
early.
Because you know me, I'm such a badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that none of us got actual like behavioral detentions. They're all just like kind of bureaucratic detentions.
Yeah, I did not argue with the teacher in front of the entire class while everyone was laughing, unfortunately.
I did once point out, I think when I was a junior in high school, that our history teacher had put all of the students of color in the back row on his seating chart. And he did send me to the principal's office for that.
Fascist.
Yeah.
But I was not wrong.
Yeah.
All right, so the kids go to detention, or they have after-school detention. So we're back at the diner after this, and Stephanie finds Joey and Wheels and says they need to talk. Joey is now wearing like a sun hat or a Panama hat. This kid has like an extensive hat collection.
He's making bank.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah. He spent it all on hats, which I appreciate. Before Stephanie can, kind of say anything, Joey asks if she wants to go to the mall with him to help him buy some new clothes, which I would absolutely agree to.
Yes.
But instead, Steph calls him out for selling drugs, and Joey tells her that they were fake drugs, and that lessons don't come cheap.
Okay, so I would just like to share some facts. I wanted to look up if $5 per pill in 1987 was like the going rate for like recreational
for
pharmaceuticals.
New Zealand zappers.
Yeah, for like a recreational pill. I unfortunately could not find that information, but what I did find was that $5 1987 is $11 2020.
Oh.
And is that American or Canadian?
I'm assuming this conversion rate was American. So as we all know, like if you went to the Scholastic Book Fair, you always thought that like everything cost more in Canada, and you're like, oh, I feel so bad for them. All their books cost $15.
So we're maybe talking $15 as opposed to even 11 or
yeah,
whatever.
but basically, Melanie and Kathleen are each out $22 from these two New Zealand zappers.
I mean, that's at least your whole allowance, if not 2 weeks of allowance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so Steph's main problem is not even necessarily that he's dealing drugs, but that he kind of tells her that they're just vitamins, and she's like, you cheated them out of their money. That's like the major concern here. Everyone's just really bad that he cheated them out of the money, not that he was selling drugs in the first place, which, valid.
Yeah, that tracks.
And as per usual, everyone hears everyone's conversations in the diner. So Melanie and Kathleen hear this conversation and they're not happy about it.
I would personally feel pretty stupid.
Yeah, and I did like, though, that Stephanie really, like, stepped up here. It's not necessarily a job of the class president, but she's kind of, like, she heard that this was going on, and she immediately went to find Joey and was kind of like, what are you doing? Why are you selling drugs? And then when she finds out it's a scam, she's like, you're ripping people off. Like, she pretty directly confronts him.
Finally doing her civic duty.
Yes, good for her. So the next scene, we are in detention, and Arthur and Yick are the only two kids in detention. Arthur tells Yick that he's never had a detention before, and that his dad is going to be so disappointed in him.
Oh, I love that he said disappointed, by the way, and not mad. This is another kind of semantic thing, but Arthur's language is very intentional, and I love that.
Yeah. And he just sounds like he's generally pretty close to his dad. Yick is upset that they're missing basketball practice, so I guess that they both made the team then. Do you think, I kind of feel like maybe everyone who tried out made the team. I don't know.
It's middle school.
Yeah. Yick also says, he just, like, can't write papers, and Arthur is like, you just have to try. Yick is really upset. He feels like Arthur's taking Raditch's side, and he tells Arthur that he's not going to help him with basketball anymore. Oh, I think he also calls him the worst player in the world. So Yick is really lashing out at Arthur here, and then Arthur cuts a promo on him, basically telling him, if he wants Raditch to stop thinking that he's dumb, then he has to prove to him that he's not, and he's not going to do that by cheating.
I love Arthur's truth bombs here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where's the lie?
Dropping them left, right, and center. I respect it.
And, like we said, like, he's seen how his basketball game has improved by practicing, but Yick hasn't really tried anything to get better at English, which also is something that if Raditch sees a student, like, struggling, maybe he could be, like, step in and offer him some help or guidance.
I did feel like there was a degree of like bootstraps to like Arthur's argument here, where he's just like, pull yourself up, dude, like you have to do this, where I mean technically as a teacher, if a student's failing, it's your fault. And I don't know if that was really the like method of thinking in the 80s, but like this is technically Raditch's problem, that their relationship has spiraled in the way that it has. Mm-hmm. So I still think that like I just really like this plot, because I think there's a lot of room for interpretation, and I think we in the end see that Yick does make the choice to be the bigger person as a child. And I think that's why this is like a good plot line for like a junior high TV show. He like actually has to consciously think like, okay, unfortunately, I do have to step up here. And like, even if this guy is stereotyping me either because of just my lack of organizational skills or another reason, he's gotta like kind of own up to that either way, even if that is kind of bullshit.
I also put in my notes, I wrote, has anyone thought about testing Yick for dyslexia? Because I feel like if you're a teacher and you see a kid who's just got paper just flying everywhere and just tons of stuff and is super disorganized and isn't really focused very well, like surely the next logical step there is to try and figure out what sort of support you can offer him. And if he doesn't have any kind of ADHD or dyslexia or any sort of that issue, then how can you work with him to help him kind of, I guess, like, how can you work with him to instill habits?
Yeah.
Organizational habits.
It's administrative failure.
Yeah.
Like a lot of this plot is that, But again, like they frame it in a way that you can see Arthur's point of view, and I think they do a good job of like, even though I'm not sure if I agree, they like let Arthur kind of speak his piece to Yick, partially because of the way Yick has been treating Arthur throughout this way, and like Yick isn't being a good friend, and so that's the reality of the that's the like real reality of the situation, is he's letting his like personal issues with Raditch affect him.
Yick also just is very quick to blame everyone around him for all of his failings, and he's like, well, it's Raditch's fault that we're missing basketball practice. She's like, well, no, it's your fault. And I like that Arthur kind of is immediately like, actually, we cheated.
Right. Arthur was against it, like, from the beginning. And he's like, this is the natural consequence of what we did. And yeah, so Yick is really taking zero personal responsibility here. But he doesn't really have anyone. All he can control in this situation, he can't necessarily control how Raditch interacts with him or thinks of him. All he can control is how he's reacting to the situation. And so far, he hasn't had a very good reaction to the situation. But this conversation with Arthur does kind of motivate him. They both start writing their essays, and that's kind of the end of that scene. So the next day, before school starts, Melanie is outside telling the crew that they got bamboozled by Joey. And so then the group goes into school and confronts Joey at his locker, demanding their money back. And they're kind of like, where is it? Where's the money? And Joey kind of gestures like he already spent it on his new clothes, which I'm just like, yes, King, he spent that money as soon as he got it. He immediately invested in his clothing.
Hell yeah.
Good for him.
It's an amazing shirt.
He looks good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say he earned that money.
He did earn that money.
I think he hustled them, and hustling is work.
Exactly. Yeah. He put the work in.
I respect it.
So we all respect his hustle and his clothing options or choices. So back in Raditch's class, at the end of class, as they're wrapping up, Raditch takes the opportunity to actually read the essay that Yick wrote out loud to the class. It's very much like a Breakfast Club moment. The paper is basically like, you may only see me as a jock, but maybe I'm also good at this thing. And you may see someone like Arthur as only a good student, but he's also good at basketball. The paper, it's like an A paper. But it's pretty basic. So I'm also like, Raditch doesn't have very high standards here. I think
that is not an A paper. I was going to ask you guys, did you guys think it was a little bit inappropriate for him to read Yick's paper out loud? Or because Yick obviously didn't write that for any kind
class.
Of public reading. So I'm wondering, did you guys find that inappropriate, or did you guys think that was okay?
Yick looked uncomfortable as it was happening, or like unsure, but I felt like it was okay because it was really calling Raditch out, and I think he did it to acknowledge that he was wrong. So everyone had already seen kind of like everything that had already happened, so I feel like he was sort of trying to resolve the situation by like giving Yick the opportunity to express himself, not putting him on the spot, but expressing his thoughts through the paper. The paper was basically just like Yick finally sharing his feelings. Like you said, it wasn't a really like necessarily well-written paper, but it was the first time he had really expressed his feelings rather than just expressing like anger or frustration. So I felt like it was okay because it was a way for Raditch to resolve the situation, but maybe he could have asked first, like, is it okay if I share this with the class? So at the end of class, Raditch calls Yick over, and they have a little bromance together. He tells him it's an A paper, and he asks for a clean slate with both of them starting over and trying harder. He also says that he'll stop name-calling him.
Very fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should have done that to begin with.
I think, and being a teacher is very difficult, and I'm gonna guess that there weren't that many resources in the 80s. Like we like spent a lot of time here like blaming Raditch as a teacher, but I don't think that they had really put that much work into some of the things that we now know that like educators should be more responsible for. I think that wasn't really like, that just wasn't part of the educational culture. And so I think a lot of teachers maybe had to figure that out for themselves through trial and error. And so, yeah, Raditch is sort of like, oh, this is a learning moment for me too.
Which I really respect about Mr. Raditch. I think, it takes a certain amount of humility to admit to a student when you're in a position of power that actually you've been wrong and that
Right.
you also have work to do in order to
Right.
mend this relationship.
Since we're sharing the Raditch love, I do have to say he looked great in this episode. Really good, like stern dad looks. Like just, I don't know.
He's
a lot
always
of good
wearing
outfits.
a suit and tie.
He just looks great.
Well, I guess that brings me to my next question, which is, do you guys have a look of the week?
I mean, I feel like Joey had some pretty good looks throughout.
He ran away with it. I didn't have a
Yeah.
specific one, unfortunately.
I was wondering if anyone noticed Snake's basketball outfit. It's only very briefly shown,
No.
but he was
No.
wearing very tiny yellow shorts and a really good tank top.
Do you think that would be the look of the week?
I'm not sure if it's my look of the week because I also loved the basketball coach with her yellow sweatpants.
Okay.
I
Maybe we can do a little competition on the Instagram, which is I'm sorry, okay pod, OKAY.
absolutely. I think we're gonna have to start putting in looks of the week.
Especially when they're not prominently featured. We don't want to miss any good looks.
Right. Joey's looks were pretty front and center.
A lot of background looks that I think we need to really be aware of.
Analyze. So Yick and Raditch kind of shake on this plan to both try harder going forward, and we end on a freeze frame of Yick's smiling face.
I think I learned you can't blame other people if you're not willing to put in some work. But I'm kind of thinking about other stuff that we learned just while talking about it but I think I think the kind of overarching lesson of the week is about taking responsibility for your own actions, whether it's Joey having to possibly pay back that however much money he ended up getting from his New Zealand zappers, or if it's a bunch of girls realizing that they just have to kind of eat shit and not get their money back, or if it's Mr. Raditch admitting that he needs to stop stereotyping his students, or if it's Yick realizing that he needs to put in a little bit of work and meet Raditch halfway. I think that everyone in this episode sort of learned about taking responsibility.
Yeah, I think what I learned was similar, but more leaning toward the sometimes you just have to eat shit part of it, where it's just like, you might be right, but also how are you going to actually navigate this situation going forward? And is it worth it to keep being pissed off about a situation, or are you going to figure out another way through?
Yeah, this was generally an episode about kind of lying or cheating people. And all of the lies are exposed, but no one faces any serious consequences, but it does sort of change the nature of the relationships. It's everyone gets mad at Joey. It actually kind of works out for Yick and Raditch because it kind of brings to the surface the issues that they were having, and then they can kind of resolve them. So I think it's kind of commenting on why people might lie initially. So Joey kind of does it as a prank and as a way to get that money, honey. He's trying to just hustle and you know, he's kind of taking advantage of people, but sort of in a harmless way. Like, he doesn't, like, he doesn't give them, like, weed laced with LSD or something. He just gives them vitamins. Like...
Wait, what?
Like, you know how sometimes people are just like, oh, like, I think there was something mixed in with these drugs. That feels like the worst version.
You're thinking of if this were a plot line on Skins.
Yes, exactly. But this is the more wholesome, it's just like fake drugs. And so Yick says that he lied to prove a point, but it actually feels like he just didn't really believe that he could do the work, and he didn't really want to try to do it. But then he kind of realizes that, like, if he had kind of just made more of an effort from the beginning, it maybe would have changed things, but also it seemed like he and Raditch just had to, like, talk it out. They just got off, like, to a bad start, and they both were wrong, and then they, like, kind of figured it out. So yeah, like, the lying, I guess, wasn't necessarily bad, because it kind of brought everyone to this, like, better place.
Did you notice in this episode that Joey is really the only character outside of the teachers who's interacting with every group of people? So, like, he interacts with Arthur and Yick, he interacts with the girls, he interacts with the guys, he interacts with everybody. And I wrote in my notes that he is Degrassi's Artie Bucco. So, like, for anyone who watches The Sopranos, like, no matter who's on the show on The Sopranos, they all go to Artie Bucco's restaurant.
Right.
And so I think of Joey as Artie Bucco, who also fucks up a lot.
But he's a smooth talker. Also a smooth talker.
Yeah, absolutely. And he doesn't mind a scheme.
Also loves a scheme. As I mentioned, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter for more content at I'm Sorry Okay Pod. OK is OKAY. If you have any questions or comments, you can also email us at I'm Sorry Okay Pod at Gmail. Once again, OK is OKAY. And that's it for The Experiment. Next week, we're watching The Cover-Up.